Hello, everybody. My name is Keith Gary, and thank you for coming to my presentation. Today, I'll be discussing organizational stress in the form of my previous job as a front of the house in my restaurant atmosphere. To start off, I'm going to be discussing a couple of different types of stress. So generally, there are two different types of stress, which are going to be situational stress and dispositional stress, but for the sake of this lecture, I guess, we're going to be discussing situational stress only. So, situational stress is going to be stress caused by certain existing conditions in a worker's environment or personal life. So, this means it's not going to be attributed to the individual person, it's going to be dealing with the environment and such. And so, from that, there are different types of situational stress, but a main type that I'll be discussing today is organizational stress, which is stress caused by physical and psychological factors of performing one's job. So now that we know what organizational stress is, the main topic of this lecture, we can get back to talking about situational stress. So within situational stress, there are going to be two main types of stressors. The first one is going to be work task stressors, which arise from your work tasks. So for example, this could be factors such as work overload when you have way too many assignments to do and you have to do them in such a short amount of time and it's just way too much and it's the tasks that are giving you the stress. Or it can be underutilization, which is the complete opposite when you feel like you're not meeting your full potential and you're just wasting space and you're not performing to your best abilities. So those are going to be work task stressors. And then the second type of stressor that falls under situational stress is going to be a work role stressor. And this is a larger list of items, and it's going to contain things such as job ambiguity, lack of control, physical work conditions, interpersonal stress, emotional labor, harassment, or work-family conflict. So it's important to note how those are different from the task stressors, in which they don't necessarily have to do with tasks rather than the role of the job and or criteria that comes with it, such as harassment wouldn't be a role of one's job, but it could be something that falls within the category of something that you just have to deal with on the job. Speaking of dealing with harassment on the job, that's a perfect segue to discuss my previous job. So to explain the term front of house, because it may be a little unclear at first, to be the front of the house in a restaurant is essentially to have all of the tasks in the front. So you are not only the waiter and the cashier, but you're also the host, you're the busser, you are customer service relations, you do every single thing in the restaurant that's not cooking. You do everything. And so with that comes a lot expected from you. So psychologically, you're expected to be able to deal with customers in a great manner. Great customer service is key, and you're also expected to cooperate as a team very heavily, especially in that type of work environment. Your fellow team needs you to be very conscious and aware of what's going on at all times to have the flow perfect. And for physical aspects of the requirements, it is a extensive list, such as like having to close, having to open, extremely long shifts. Basically, being the front of the house is just working the front of a restaurant. With the background with what's entailed in this job description now, I have absolutely no problem discussing the stress and issues I faced whilst I was working there. So one thing I noticed right off the bat that was very easy was it was super easy for you to get work overload due to the poor task division. So like I said, with any task being your responsibility, if you're working with a team that's not going to do their stuff, that means you're automatically in charge of everything now. So you have to pick up their slack no matter what. And depending on who you work with and if they know you're a good worker, like people will just automatically like work less. They think it's an excuse. So that was always something to look out for. The second thing to be looking out for within that same vein of the poor task division was always job ambiguity. So the managers were never satisfied. If you were bussing a table, the manager would come over and be like, "Why are you doing that? Why aren't you doing this other job? That's also your job." But there was just no assignment or no one told you to go do that. You're just expected to do everything. So the way they ran things was very unsatisfactory, as well as the physical work conditions. I did not appreciate how they would do the schedule. They would make me close, then open on the same days, which is just not really fun. I wish they kind of worked that better so I could get a better night's sleep while I was in school full time. The next factor that led to large unsatisfaction at this job was interpersonal stressors, specifically inconsistent management. So the relationship between the management and the employees was very poor, especially how there was one point when a new hire was abusing drugs on the job, and then our previous manager, who we had ties with, chose to blatantly ignore all of our requests and our issues that we had brought up to her and sided with her new manager, even though they had no prior history. So stuff like that was just extra stressful to add onto the plate. Not to mention all the harassment you already get to deal with from customers. So with that, I knew it would be coming into the job. There's nothing you can prevent that happening, or there's nothing you can do to prevent that. However, managers do have the power to like deal with that situation, and my previous manager dealt with the situation very poorly. It was always they would try to make the employee seem like the bad person for like denying the employee's or the customers' requests and then grant customers insane requests like free meals all the time, blatantly just making the employees look like purposefully look bad. But like behind closed doors, we were just following our boss's orders. So it was just a lot of confusion like that. Not to mention, when I was applying for the job, she actually lied about the pay and said, as I worked there, we would have meetings to discuss pay raises, which I asked for 6 months, or I asked that 3 months, 6 months, and 9 months, and I never once got a meeting to discuss a pay raise. So it was just things like that that led to my ultimate unsatisfaction. So with all of my sources of stress now identified, we can turn to the textbook and see what Reggio has to say about it. So the effects of worker stress, I chose three to outline that I noticed a difference in me. One was high stress levels are often associated with anxiety. That's one that I suffered from a lot. I noticed I was a lot more anxious about my job all the time, even at home when nothing was necessarily relating to my job. The second one is going to be job performance. I did notice as I was getting upset with the company, I would put less and less effort into my work and ultimately kind of just stop caring. And lastly, increased turnover was a large factor as well. My fellow employees and I would always talk about leaving the establishment due to the poor management, and everyone I know to this day doesn't work there anymore. A related research study I found to this topic was exploring and reducing stress in young restaurant workers, results of randomized field trial. In this study, they took young restaurant workers ages 16 to 29, and they introduced a new idea of team resilience, which was a program specifically where they met 3 days, and it had two goals. So one goal was to help young restaurant workers manage stress in areas of importance to them in life, such as relationship aspects, school, family, and the second goal was to enhance the restaurant climate for new workers after the TR training occurs. So, such as it just fixes the work environment completely so that new workers have a stable and positive environment to come into. So the TR consists of 9 different modules, and the topics are some such as stress management, teamwork, drug and alcohol abuse awareness, and work-life balance. And from the study, they actually learned that the results suggested the TR program was in fact successful in both categories, more so successful in decreasing exposure to problem coworkers. So that would be the second goal in creating a good work environment. But it did also have some effects in reports of stress decreasing in personal life. Due to the positive results from the study I found, I think that the team resilience program would be very beneficial for the restaurant I used to work at for the reasoning that it is very team oriented. It is seemingly the most team oriented type of structure I could possibly think of, so I think it would benefit greatly. Not to mention the flexible delivery, the cost value, and the time management. You could do it right before or after a shift. The value just seems very good in return for what you would have to put into it. Additionally, I think another type of program that would be useful would be just better training in general for the managers and leaders, considering most problems I did have stem from that branch. I just think that overall training for employees and managers all around would be a good idea.